Hey, welcome back. Today we're talking about private capital unleashed with ninja presentations. All right, so if you're like most real estate entrepreneurs that I know, you want to raise capital and you want to do it sooner rather than later. If you're like me, you might have the situation where you've got a deal on the go and you need to raise some money very, very quickly for it. But ideally, you're doing it the other way. You're raising the capital first, getting the investors on board, and then finding the deal. So what we're going to talk about today is a ninja strategy, a way for you to get 10, 15, maybe even 20 meetings booked with your ideal investor prospects with zero pressure on them, zero pressure on you, and a high likelihood of raising capital. In fact, people we've worked with over the years have raised hundreds of thousands of dollars very quickly following this strategy, and you can too. All right, let me walk you through this whole ninja capital strategy process. So the whole idea here is to get a whole bunch, 10, 15, maybe even 20 investor meetings booked very quickly and do them kind of like a practice run. Okay, so what do I mean? I mean, you're going to pick 10 to 20 people who are likely to do you a favor and send them a quick little text message or a DM asking them if they'll take a look at your investor presentation with you. Not that you're trying to sell them anything, you just want a second set of eyes. You're just looking for some honest feedback about your investor presentation, right? So step number one is to understand what the goal is of this whole process. So the goal is come up with a list of 15 to 20 people, do the outreach to them, and get as many meetings booked as you can as quickly as possible, all right? And then the second goal is to get practice, right? So that you get very, very comfortable with your new big check pitch deck that we talked about in a previous episode, and you get some practice runs under your belt. Third goal is to get some investors enrolled sooner rather than later. So let's walk through the different steps. So step number one is to pick those 10 to 20 people who are likely to do you a favor. So how are you going to find these people? Well, it should be the people that come to the top of your mind, your closer friends and family members and business associates, people who are likely to do you a solid if you ask them for a favor, okay? Other things you want to take into account are, if you've done the whole connection resurrection campaign that we talked about in a previous video, should be up there, then you might have a whole bunch of people that have kind of reached out to you that you've reconnected with. You can look at those folks as well. So criteria for people who you're going to reach out to: number one, you've got a good solid pre-existing relationship with them. Number two, they're likely to do you a favor. And ideally, if possible, you've got a pretty good idea that if it made sense to them, they could invest with you, or they know other people who could invest with you, right? So you come up with that list, 10, 15, 20 people. The next step is you send each one of those people an individual little text or direct message, right? Something like this: Hey, John, it's Dave. I'm going to ask you for a quick little favor. If you could take a look over my investor presentation with me, that would be absolutely awesome. I'm looking for some honest feedback. I'm looking for some constructive criticism about my presentation. Not going to try to sell you anything. I could just really use a second set of eyes. Can you help me out? Okay, send a question mark, a little smiley face. Send that out, copy and paste, send it out to a whole bunch of people. And what we've seen is 80 to 90% of people will say sure, all right? And then you can set up a time to meet with them, either face-to-face for a coffee or even jump on Zoom. That works just about as well, all right? So that's the first stage. Get as many of those kind of meetings booked as you can. The second part is, when you're doing these meetings, you're going to do them as if it's a practice session. So you're not going to go in all super slick and super polished. You want to kind of do it like you're doing a practice run. So you go through your big check pitch deck with the person, get their feedback. Don't argue with them, right? Because you've asked them for their feedback, so they're going to give it to you. Just thank them very, very much for it. And then as you're wrapping things up, you say something like this: Hey, John, thanks so much for your feedback. Really, really appreciate it. Now, this probably isn't a good fit for you, but do you know anybody else who might be interested in these kind of deals? And then zip it, right? Because John's going to take a few seconds to kind of think about this. And then one of three things is going to happen. John might say, hey, you know what, Dave? Really cool. Love what you're doing. But no, yeah, you're right. I'm not interested. Can't really think of anybody off the top of my head. But if somebody comes to mind, I'll let you know. Okay? And that's perfectly fine. And chances are that's probably what's going to happen more often than not. And that's no problem. And here's why that's no problem. Number one, you've gotten a practice run under your belt. You've got that first notch on your belt. And number two is the other person has seen what you're doing with open eyes, right? They're doing you a favor. They're reviewing your presentation with you. And now they really understand what you're up to. So either when time and circumstances change for them, if you do a good job with the marketing, you'll stay top of mind and they'll come back to you in 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, whatever that is, that's fine. Or number two, when they hear somebody talking about lousy returns on their stock market portfolio or mutual funds or whatever, they'll think of you and refer that person to you. So that, even in that scenario of them saying, no, they're not interested, they don't know anybody, it's still a win. So chalk that up to a win. Second outcome could be they say, hey, John says, hey, Dave, now that I see what you're doing, that's pretty cool. I might be interested in this. Awesome. Get them signed off on an expression of interest, add them to your investor shortlist, and you've hit the ground running. This can definitely happen, especially if you've got 10, 15, 20 meetings booked, it can definitely happen. Or the third thing could be they say, hey, David, well, yeah, no, I'm not interested at the moment, but my buddy Chuck was talking about what crappy returns he was getting in the stock market. He might be a good person, all right? Then you get a warm introduction and a referral to that person's connection. So either way, it's a big win for you. Those three outcomes, either one of them is a big win. So this can work really, really well. So for example, we have a client, Dr. Osama Mowafi, and Dr. Osama did this process and he booked 10 ninja presentations. He figured out exactly who he wanted to reach out to, sent them all a text message, got all of those meetings booked within 2 weeks. And at the end of the whole thing, when the smoke cleared, he had 6 people say, no thanks, Dr. Osama, not interested right now, or don't have the capital or whatever. Couldn't think of any referrals. But out of those 10 people, 4 people did say yes. And he actually ended up raising $400,000 between those 4 people for his real estate deals. I don't know about you, but that's a pretty good return on effort, isn't it? 10 meetings turning into $400,000 in capital, that's a very good return on effort. So you could do the same thing, but there are a few things that I'm going to highly recommend that you have in place first. All right, we're back. So what you want to have in place first is you want to have your foundation set up properly first before you get going. You want to make sure that you've got your target group of ideal investors. You've got them all in a CRM system. You've got your investor-focused website, and you most definitely need to have your big check pitch deck ready to go. All right, because this whole ninja process is part of our launch phase of the Money Partner Formula. So you can see that's right in the middle there. So the next thing you want to make sure that you do before you do the ninja is that you've warmed people up with that connection resurrection process. And again, we got a video about that if you haven't checked that out yet. Then you are ready to do the ninja. I highly recommend you don't do that without having the bases set up properly first. So make sure you've got the foundation in place. Make sure that you've connected with people and resurrected some of those long lost connections. Then do the ninja process. All right. Now, if you like that idea, and if you want more ideas about raising capital, go ahead, grab a copy of my book, Money Partner Formula. You can get it at investorattractionbook.com or click in the link in the description below. This goes through my entire Money Partner Formula process and walks through step by step in detail exactly what to do and how to do it. Grab your copy today.